Blake Bortles. There were times, believe it or not, where some believed Bortles could be the future of the Jacksonville Jaguars. At 6'5" and 232 in 2014, the traits and natural-born gifts were enough for scouts to look over some glaring issues. Sadly, Bortles never panned out for the Jags, and despite having some opportunities on other teams, could never live up to the expectations of being a top 5 pick in the NFL. But even though he didn't live up to the hype, how bad was he actually? In today's video, we will break down the career of the quarterback out of Central Florida, from his early upbringing to his college days into the NFL, where he did have some highs and the obvious lows, to determine how bad he actually was. And as always, we will give Bortles a final grade at the end of the video, so stick around for that. As we always do, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and begin at the beginning of where it all started for Blake, or I should say Robbie Blake Bortles. Bortles was born on April 28, 1992 in Altamonte Springs, Florida. Blake, like many other athletes, didn't just play one sport, as he was multi-talented. While he would excel in both football and baseball, Bortles would choose to focus on football, and the 3-star recruit would commit to the University of Central Florida. There, Bortles would take the UCF, a school that, at best, was on the rise to new heights. His peak during his college years would take place in his final year, where in 2013, the Knights would turn in a 12-1 record that would have them win the AAC championship and would take part in the Fiesta Bowl against Baylor. And in a shootout, they would come out on top 52-42. Bortles for the season would toss 25 touchdowns to 9 interceptions and would throw over 3,500 yards. Bortles was also an underrated runner at this time, as he would rush for another 272 yards and tack on another 6 rushing touchdowns. Despite the great play to come out of 2013, there were still some things he could definitely work on. His mechanics and decision making, especially when faced under pressure, were where his struggles would really come to light. He also wasn't the most accurate quarterback out there, so there was very much room for improvement. Given that that was the case, Bortles was one of those guys that may have actually benefited from staying in college for his senior year.
One more year! One more year!
But of course, he would opt to join the league and forego his final season in college, and it's really hard to knock someone for it when your stock is as high as potentially the first quarterback taken in the draft, so you kind of understand where he's coming from in that regard. Fast forwarding to the 2014 draft, Bortles would be the 3rd player taken and the first quarterback off the board, going to Duval County to play for GM Dave Caldwell and head coach Gus Bradley. Oh boy.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Bortles would begin his rookie year on the bench, but would be thrust into NFL action when the Jags benched Chad Henne in the midst of a blowout in Week 3. Bortles would actually have very good stats, all things considered, tossing 2 touchdowns to 2 interceptions and passed for 223 yards, despite not starting the entire game against Indy. From this moment forward, Bortles would remain the starter, and by year's end, did look promising. While the team was atrocious around him, they finished 3-13, Bortles himself, had some flashes of what his potential could actually be. The only real knock on this guy, and I guess it's a big deal, at the end of the day, was that he was really turnover prone, as he would fumble 7 times and throw another 17 interceptions during his rookie run. Bortles was also the most sacked quarterback at 55 for his rookie season. 2015 is the season that had everyone fooled. In 2015, Bortles would toss 35 touchdowns to 18 interceptions. He would also pass for over 4,400 yards and add another 300 yards on the ground. In this season, one particular game against the Titans really does stand out. Bortles would throw 5 touchdowns, showing just what the man, who again is surrounded by a lackluster team, was capable of. The glaring issue, again, turnovers. Yes, we mentioned the 18 already, but we should also throw in the fact that Bortles fumbled a league high 14 times, losing 5 of them. And despite this being a success, the team finished 5-11. 2016, Bortles and turnovers were the only thing consistent about this season, in which the Jags finished 3-13. During different points of the campaign, Jacksonville would fire offensive coordinator Greg Olsen and then their head coach Gus Bradley. Bortles would toss 23 touchdowns to 16 interceptions, nearly missing out on 4,000 passing yards. So it seemed like the team was heading for a reset come the 2017 season, but this is another year where you thought maybe Bortles can be the future for Jacksonville, as he would be part of the team that would go on a magical run for this upcoming season. In 2017, out of nowhere, the Jaguars returned their previous 3-13 record into a 10-6 AFC South crown. Yes, their run consisted mostly of a top-tier defense led by Calais Campbell and Jalen Ramsey, but Bortles made sure he did his part. In his first ever playoff game, Bortles looked like a rookie all over again. While he did rush for 88 yards, he would pass for a measly 87 on 12 completions out of 23 attempts. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is kind of why Bortles, for me, does get some points, because clearly he did not play great in this game. When he was confronted about his poor performance, my guy went ahead and said that there are people who think LeBron James sucks. So if that happens, quote, I'm sure there will always be people that think that I suck. And as wild as it was for Bortles to compare himself to LeBron, at the end of the day, dub's a dub. And it doesn't get any more wilder or crazier when you look to the following week in the divisional against the Steelers, where the Jaguars went ahead and dropped 45 on them. Even though I know Leonard Fournette was the focal point on that offense, I mean, hey, 45 points, Fournette doesn't do it by himself completely. I'm just saying. The Jags season would come to an end in the AFC Championship game against the Brady-led Patriots, where they lost by a narrow margin. 2017 was the high point of Bortles' career, as 2018 was the beginning of the end of his time in the NFL. 2018 was a snap back to reality. After starting 3-1 in 2018, the team would collapse and finish 5-11. Defense, still top tier, ranked 5th in the NFL. Offense, woeful to say the least. They ranked 26th in the pass attack, while Bortles himself would go back to his old turnover ways. It wouldn't get really bad until a game against the Chiefs, where despite throwing for over 300 yards, Bortles would toss 4 ugly interceptions to just a single touchdown. And throughout the season, Bortles would be benched on and off, and by end of season, the Jags had seen enough. They would move on from their former number 3 overall pick before the start of the 2019 season, and his time in Jacksonville was over. And that's why I say I don't think he's as terrible as some people make him out to be, because even in the things that I've explained, and some things that I didn't even explain, or go into, he had some really great flashes, and there's not a lot of busts that can lay claim to some of the accolades that he actually had. In 2019, Bortles would sign with the Rams, only attempting a total of 2 passes during this season. He would spend some time with the Broncos practice squad in 2020, where the only notable thing that happened there was that he was one of 3 Denver quarterbacks to test positive for COVID at the same exact time. And I don't know if you guys remember that time. They had to start, I think it was a wide receiver at quarterback. Leave a comment if you guys remember that game for the Broncos.
Hinton knocked down, lobbed it up, picked off.
In 2021, he would have stints with Green Bay and New Orleans before finally calling it quits in the 2022 season at the age of just 30. Bortles' final career stats include passing for over 17,000 yards, 103 touchdowns to 75 interceptions, 1,766 rush yards with another 8 rushing touchdowns, 0 Pro Bowls, and a 24-49 record. Now that we've gone through the man's career, like we always do, let's go ahead and circle back to the original question. How bad was Blake Bortles actually? It felt as though Bortles was always going to have an uphill battle from the moment it was decided he was going to Jacksonville. He went to a team that had been bad since the days of Mark Brunell. The coaches around him did not help this raw prospect elevate to the next level in the NFL, whether it was working on his mechanics or surrounding him with any sort of talent. And I do want to say that Allen Robinson and Leonard Fournette, just off the top of my head, maybe Mercedes Lewis too, were the only true weapons that he had. And that's not me including how bad his offensive line was almost year in and year out. I mean, seriously guys, I don't think I've emphasized enough how bad the offensive line is. Luke Joeckel, who is widely regarded as an NFL bust, was somehow one of the better offensive linemen on these teams. Just put that into perspective, y'all. You combine all this with the 2 head coaches that were in charge in Jacksonville during his time, who have a combined career record of 52 wins and 108 losses between them. Bortles was essentially thrown to the wolves, yet he still had flashes, to say the least. Say what you want about his turnovers, the man did get 35 touchdowns in a season. And while I believe that Bortles did not meet expectations of a third overall pick, it's hard for me to call him a bust in the NFL. I can understand why some may call him as such, but I personally believe that there were way too many flashes for me to call him a bust. What bust can you name that throws for 35 touchdowns in a season? How many busts in the NFL can lay claim that they have thrown 5 touchdowns in a game? At the end of the day, even if the Jags are one of the newer teams in the NFL, I believe it does mean something to be the franchise leader in most categories. Bortles is the Jaguars leader in passing touchdowns and yards, not only in a single season, but in their respective careers. So throwing all of this in with the clearly obvious downs of his time in Jacksonville, if I had to give the career of Blake Bortles a grade, I would give him a C-. But what do you guys think? What grade would you guys give the career of Blake Bortles? Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys are still here, thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching. If I missed something, please let me know in the comments. I do take my time to read them, and if there's something that makes sense, I do try to respond as often as I can. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, y'all. Shoop, boy!